Have you ever woken up with the strange feeling that you're carrying a backpack no one else can see, heavy, relentless, yet you don't even remember putting it on? Do you ever feel like you work twice as hard, only to get half the result? That just as you're about to step through the door of success, some invisible force slams it shut in front of you? Virgo, this is not random. This is not bad luck. This is the weight of a hidden debt, a karmic burden you've been carrying since 2010. For 15 long years, a shadow has followed you, whispering that you don't deserve, that doors will stay locked, that blessings will always be out of reach. But listen carefully, because on September 14th and 15th, 2025, the wheel of destiny turns. That weight, that cycle, the invisible force that has held you back for over a decade, it is about to end. And a new path is opening. Not by chance, but because your soul has finally paid its karmic dues. Are you ready to step out of the shadows? Are you willing to believe that freedom and light are waiting for you? In today's video, I will take you deep into the hidden truth behind these 15 years of trials. You will understand why you felt blocked again and again, and more importantly, why now, at this very moment, you are the one holding the key to your liberation. This is not just an astrological forecast. This is the awakening of your spirit. A reminder that the burden was never a punishment, but a training ground, shaping your strength, your patience, your resilience. And now, that strength is ready to shine. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mindfulness Meditation. Your support is what gives us the energy to keep creating more transformative and healing messages like this. Stay with me until the very end, because after today, you will never look back on the last 15 years in the same way again. 1. The moment of liberation. Virgo's cosmic release on September 14th to 15th, 2025. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the weight of the past no longer holds power, when the chains we once thought permanent quietly dissolve, and a new horizon reveals itself. For Virgo, that moment arrives on September 14th to 15th, 2025. This is not just a date on a calendar, it is a threshold, a sacred crossing where 15 years of invisible debt, carried like a heavy backpack through storms and trials, finally reaches its conclusion. I speak now as both a storyteller and as a witness, a guide who has watched Virgo stumble and rise again, over and over, during this long pilgrimage of the spirit. Imagine walking through a labyrinth with no map, circling the same patterns, meeting the same obstacles, feeling the same silent resistance. For 15 years, Virgo's path was one of unseen repayment, a kind of spiritual contract written in the ink of destiny. And yet, beneath it all, there was purpose. Every delay, every closed door, every unanswered prayer carried the whisper of refinement. On these days in September, the prison gates swing open. Virgo may not hear trumpets from the sky or see the clouds part, but they will feel it. A subtle shift first, like the exhale after years of holding your breath. Then, signs too clear to ignore. The opportunity that once slipped through your fingers suddenly returns. A relationship that ended without closure brings peace at last. A problem left unsolved for over a decade finally dissolves. This is liberation not only in spirit but in flesh and bone, in daily life and circumstance. From a Christian lens, one might see this as the end of a wilderness season, much like the 40 years the Israelites wandered before reaching the Promised Land. From the perspective of astrology and tarot, it is the final turning of Saturn's karmic wheel, the completion of a cycle that demanded discipline, sacrifice, and relentless perseverance. Whether you read the heavens or the scriptures, the message converges. Virgo has endured the test, and the test is now complete. What makes this story deeply moving is not only the cosmic timing, but the emotional truth. For those between the ages of 40 and 70, this message strikes a familiar chord. Life has already taught us about patience, about dreams deferred, about carrying burdens that no one else can see. To hear that such a weight could finally be lifted is not just a prediction, it is a balm for the heart, a reminder that no season of struggle lasts forever. And yet, let us be honest, liberation is not always easy. Sometimes, when the doors open, we hesitate. We have grown so accustomed to the prison that freedom feels uncertain, even frightening. Virgo must remember that release is both a gift and a responsibility. When the old walls fall, the question becomes, how will you walk through the open door? What will you do with the lightness that now fills your spirit? In my own reflection, I see this as a metaphor for forgiveness, both divine and human. For 15 years, Virgo may have carried debts that were never theirs to begin with, obligations inherited from family, expectations rooted in culture, guilt born from perfectionism. On September 14th to 15th, those chains no longer bind. And in that release, Virgo is invited not just to receive freedom but to forgive themselves, to let go of the narrative that they must always strive harder, give more, carry more. This is why I call it a cosmic homecoming. The new opportunities that emerge, be it career, relationship, or health, are not random rewards. They are the natural unfolding of a soul that has learned its lesson and is ready to live differently. Virgo, you will step into spaces that once rejected you, not because you are now more worthy, but because you finally recognize that you always were. So let the signs speak. Notice the old friend who reaches out, the problem that resolves, the long-locked door that opens. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. They are the universe's way of saying, the debt is paid. The road is clear. Walk forward. As your guide and companion in this moment, I urge you, do not minimize the beauty of what is unfolding. Mark the dates. Honor them in your heart. And most importantly, choose to step into this new chapter with courage. For Virgo, September 14th to 15th, 2025, is not just the end of a cycle. It is the beginning of a life unburdened, authentic, and radiant. 2. The roots of the karmic lesson, Virgo's journey through the wilderness. Every great story has a beginning, not just in time, but in the heart. For Virgo, that story began in 2010, a year that would quietly alter the course of their destiny. A door closed. Perhaps it was a dream that dissolved in a single phone call, a relationship that ended without explanation, or an opportunity that seemed certain and then vanished like mist in the morning sun. In that moment, Virgo's life was marked, not with failure, but with initiation. The unseen hand of fate placed them on a path that would become a 15-year pilgrimage of the soul. I speak now both as storyteller and as one who walks beside Virgo, interpreting the echoes of heaven and the wisdom of ancient symbols. The years that followed 2010 were not random. They unfolded in a haunting rhythm, opportunities that slipped away at the last moment, relationships that unraveled despite devotion, efforts that bore only half their expected fruit. For Virgo, it felt as though recognition was always a step behind, as though destiny itself held them back. And yet, beneath this cycle lay a deeper design. From a Christian lens, we might call it a wilderness journey. Just as the Israelites wandered for 40 years before stepping into promise, Virgo wandered through 15 years of testing. The wilderness is never about punishment, it is about preparation. It strips us of illusions, humbles the proud, and teaches the kind of patience that cannot be learned in ease. From the language of astrology and tarot, this period bears the marks of Saturn, the stern teacher of karma. Saturn does not deny, it delays, insisting that we learn humility, perseverance, and compassion before we are entrusted with greater gifts. What Virgo has endured since 2010 is nothing less than Saturn's school of the spirit, a curriculum written in invisible ink across daily life. The patterns repeated. Virgo would pour themselves into relationships, only to watch them dissolve, often in the very season when hope seemed brightest. They would strive for recognition, only to have the spotlight shift just before their name was called. Over and over, the same script replayed, like a song stuck on one verse. And with each repetition came a question whispered deep inside. Am I cursed? Am I unseen? Am I not enough? Here lies the root of the karmic lesson. It was never about punishment, but about purification. Virgo, more than any other sign, carries a longing for perfection, not just in what they do, but in who they are. Their gift is their integrity, but their shadow is self-criticism, the belief that if they just try harder, they will finally be worthy. The universe, in its paradoxical mercy, used these 15 years to show Virgo that worthiness does not come from success or recognition, but from humility, patience, faith, and compassion. Imagine this journey as a circle. Each time Virgo thought they had broken free, they found themselves right back at the starting point. But circles are not prisons, they are spirals. With each return, the lessons sank deeper, carving wisdom into the soul like rings into the trunk of a tree. What felt like endless repetition was in fact a spiral upward, carrying Virgo toward a higher perspective. From my own reflection, I see a truth mirrored in both scripture and the stars. Growth is not linear. The Apostle Paul spoke of a thorn in the flesh, a burden that remained so that he would not become arrogant. In the same way, Virgo's repeating cycles were thorns, not to destroy them, but to teach compassion, for themselves and for others. For how can one show mercy to a struggling soul unless they have known struggle themselves? And here lies the quiet brilliance of Virgo's karmic lesson. Out of broken dreams came resilience. Out of lost opportunities came the courage to try again. Out of invisibility came the ability to see others in their pain. Virgo was being shaped, not for small recognition, but for lasting impact. What seemed like delay was, in fact, refinement. When I step into the role of Virgo and speak through their heart, I feel both the ache and the quiet strength that has grown across these years. I hear the voice of one who has cried out, "Why me?" and then learned slowly to ask instead, "What is this teaching me?" That is the pivot of transformation. That is where victimhood turns to wisdom. As a guide, I see the symbolism clearly. 2010 planted the seed, the wilderness nurtured it, and the years became the soil of humility. And now, in 2025, the cycle nears completion. The karmic lesson that began with loss will end with liberation. Virgo's humility will become their crown, their patience will become their strength, their compassion will become their calling card. For those listening, especially in the middle and later seasons of life, this story carries resonance beyond astrology. It reminds us that our greatest disappointments are often disguised classrooms. It assures us that cycles do end, debts are paid, and burdens do lift. And perhaps most importantly, it reveals that the wilderness was never wasted. Every tear, every unanswered prayer, every delay was bending Virgo into a shape that could hold blessing without breaking. The root of the karmic lesson is clear: to surrender perfectionism, to release the need for constant recognition, to trust that the unseen work matters. Virgo has carried this weight long enough. And soon, when the gates of September open, they will discover that what once felt like punishment was in fact preparation for a destiny far greater than they imagined. So let us honor this journey, not with pity, but with reverence. For Virgo's story is not one of endless struggle, it is the mythic arc of a soul being refined like gold in fire. And now, the time of testing gives way to the season of harvest. 3. Virgo's 15-year journey. From trial to transcendence. There are moments in life when the weight of years feels almost unbearable, as though the heavens themselves placed a burden upon your shoulders. For Virgo, the past 15 years have carried such a weight, not as punishment, but as preparation. And when you pause to see it through the lens of faith, astrology, or even the whisper of an old tarot card turned upright on the table, you begin to realize that what felt like hardship was, in fact, a sacred training ground for the soul. I want to take you back to that time, perhaps to the year 2010, when something unseen began to weave itself into your story. To many Virgos, it felt like an invisible hand closing doors just as you reached for them, a cycle of effort without reward, as if life demanded you work twice as hard to receive half as much. And I know, for those of you listening, especially if you are in your 50s, 60s, or 70s, this resonates. You have lived enough life to know that not every obstacle is random. Sometimes the pattern itself is the teacher. As a storyteller, I cannot ignore the drama here, the endless loop of disappointment, hope, then setback. It is the classic arc of myth, echoing the Israelites wandering for 40 years in the desert, or the blacksmith hammering steel until it glows white-hot, only to plunge it into the fire once more. Virgo, you have been that steel. The flames of circumstance have not broken you, they have shaped you into something enduring. And yet, here lies the paradox. The very things you thought were crushing you were actually carving out your strength. Every heartbreak, every false start, every moment when you questioned if you were cursed, those were chisels in the hands of the divine, sculpting your discernment, sharpening your intuition, and deepening your well of compassion. This is not punishment. It is alchemy. When I think of Virgo, I often imagine the figure of the Virgin in ancient iconography. Pure, but not fragile, solitary, but not lonely. She carries the wheat of the harvest in her arms, a symbol not of ease, but of labor, patience, and timing. And isn't that what your last 15 years have been? A harvest in waiting. Crops planted long ago, watered with tears, growing silently in the soil of your persistence. Now, as the cosmic wheel turns, particularly around mid-September, the story reaches its release. This is where the metaphor of the loop finally breaks. No longer will you be caught in the repetition of almost but not yet. Instead, there is a release, a letting go, a shift that allows all those seeds to finally bear fruit. If you have felt a shadow at your back, whispering that blessings were locked away from you, know this, that shadow was never permanent. It was only there to guide you inward until you discovered the light that no force could extinguish. And here is where my own reflection comes in. I believe Virgo's journey teaches us something larger than astrology. It reminds us of the Christian idea of grace, that suffering is not always condemnation, but often a path to wisdom and renewal. It reminds us of the Tarot's Wheel of Fortune, which teaches that cycles are part of our spiritual growth. And it reminds us, most importantly, that endurance transforms character. You are not the same person you were 15 years ago. You are wiser. You are stronger. You have a clarity that only comes from walking through the fire and surviving. Some may ask, why did it take so long? Why did God, or fate, or the stars delay the blessing? My answer, as both narrator and fellow traveler, is this: because your soul needed the depth that only time could give. Quick victories rarely last. But when blessings arrive after years of struggle, they root themselves deeply. They cannot be taken from you, because you earned them not by chance, but by endurance. And so, Virgo, your story is not of defeat but of transformation. 15 years of trial have prepared you for a future where your wisdom is your strength, your resilience your crown, and your compassion your greatest gift to others. Like steel pulled from the forge, you now carry a brilliance that is unshakable. Let this be your reminder: the loop has served its purpose, and now comes the release. Walk forward not with bitterness for what was taken, but with gratitude for what was forged within you. For you are no longer merely enduring, you are transcending. And in your light, others will find courage to endure their own cycles, and to believe that beyond every desert lies a promised land. 4. Virgo's threshold of forgiveness, entering the new chapter. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the circle must break. For Virgo, that moment is now. After 15 long years of carrying invisible burdens, of living in patterns that seemed unshakable, the invitation is no longer to fight, nor to endure, but to forgive. And forgiveness, though it sounds simple, is the most daring act of liberation a human heart can perform. Let me tell you why. For so long, Virgo has been caught in a loop, effort followed by disappointment, hope followed by delay, trust betrayed just as it was beginning to bloom. It is almost mythic, the way the story has repeated itself. Like a character in scripture who cannot leave the wilderness until the lesson is learned, Virgo has wandered through deserts of the soul, asking, why must I bear this weight? Was it punishment? Was it destiny? Or was it some unspoken debt to the stars? But here's the truth, spoken softly yet with power: those 15 years were not punishment. They were preparation. Every obstacle has been a furnace refining the heart. Every heartbreak has been a chisel carving out deeper compassion. Every setback has been a mirror teaching discernment. And yet, even preparation has its final step. That step is forgiveness. Forgiveness, for Virgo, is not just about releasing others. It is about loosening the chains that have kept the heart tethered to the past. Think of it as the final key that unlocks the door. Without it, you may stand in front of your new chapter, watching its beauty from the threshold, but unable to step inside. With it, you cross into a life where the past no longer dictates the rhythm of your future. As a storyteller, I imagine forgiveness like the moment in a tarot reading when the card of judgment appears. The angel's trumpet sounds, and souls rise from their graves. Not to be condemned, but to be awakened. Forgiveness is that awakening. It is the soul choosing resurrection over resentment. It is the conscious decision to live no longer in reaction to old wounds, but in devotion to the light that those wounds revealed. And as one who has walked with faith, I also see the echo of Christ's words on the cross: Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is not passive surrender, it is divine strength. It is the refusal to let bitterness have the final word. Virgo, when you forgive, you are not excusing what was done to you. You are reclaiming the authority over your spirit. You are saying, I will not let the past hold me hostage. Let's be honest though. Forgiveness is not easy, especially for Virgo. This sign is ruled by Mercury, the mind that remembers every detail, every slight, every pattern of betrayal. Virgo has a sharp memory and a keen eye for what went wrong. That same gift of discernment, when unhealed, becomes a prison. But when forgiveness enters, that prison dissolves. What was once a cycle of pain becomes a cycle of wisdom. Virgo finally steps off the wheel and begins a spiral upward. I want to speak directly now, as if I were Virgo myself, standing at the edge of this threshold. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I forgive the universe, not because it was fair, but because I trust it was shaping me. And most of all, I forgive myself, for staying too long, for doubting my worth, for carrying guilt that was never mine to bear. I lay it all down now. This act of forgiveness is not weakness, it is power. It is the quiet strength of a soul that knows its value. It is the courage to unclench the fist, to let the old chapter fall away, to walk into the unknown without the baggage of what came before. And here is my reflection. Forgiveness is the only soil in which true freedom grows. Without it, Virgo may continue to circle the same deserts, meeting the same lessons in new disguises. With it, the loop breaks. Life opens. Doors swing wide. New blessings arrive unchained from the past. I believe this moment is cosmic but also deeply personal. In astrology, the mid-September sky reflects release and harvest. Spiritually, it is the time when seeds sown long ago finally come to fruition. And psychologically, it is the point when Virgo realizes that no one else holds the key. Forgiveness is an inside job. The lock was never on the door, it was on the heart. So Virgo, as your storyteller, your witness, and your fellow traveler, I say this: the chapter ahead is waiting. But it will not open until you let go of what was. Forgive them. Forgive the stars. Forgive yourself. And in that act, you will feel the chains fall away. You will hear the trumpet of awakening. You will step at last into the freedom that has been prepared for you all along. Because the truth is simple, yet profound. Forgiveness is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your new one. 5. Virgo's Soul Graduation. The Gift of Liberation on September 14th to 15th, 2025. Every journey has its threshold, that point where struggle gives way to revelation, where the long night yields to dawn. For Virgo, September 14th to 15th, 2025 is such a threshold. It is not merely a date on a calendar, it is the moment when the unseen debt of 15 years comes to an end, when the soul walks across the stage of destiny to receive its diploma. Yes, this is more than liberation. It is a graduation, a sacred ceremony of the spirit. When I step into Virgo's shoes, I feel the weight of the years gone by. The constant effort, the missed chances, the subtle voice whispering, "Not yet, not enough." For so long, it seemed as though the universe held Virgo back, testing them with cycles that repeated like chapters written in invisible ink. A dream opening, only to vanish. A relationship flowering, only to fade. Recognition appearing close, only to be snatched away. And yet, through this long trial, something profound was happening. Virgo was being formed, refined, and seasoned, not punished, but prepared. Now, as these September days draw near, I speak as both storyteller and guide, and also as Virgo itself, voicing the ache and the hope. I say to you, the chains are ready to fall. The prison gates are ready to swing open. And what lies ahead is not merely freedom, but the full flowering of who Virgo was always meant to be. From a Christian perspective, this moment is reminiscent of Paul's words, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." 15 years of trials have not been wasted. They are the training ground that allows Virgo to stand tall, not in arrogance, but in humility. This is the soul's graduation ceremony, the conferring of a degree not written on paper, but etched in the spirit through patience, endurance, and compassion. From the language of astrology, we might say Saturn's contract has expired. The karmic teacher who demanded discipline, sacrifice, and surrender now steps aside. Virgo is no longer bound by invisible obligations. Instead, the lessons learned about humility, faith, and mercy become a treasure chest of wisdom. What once felt like chains now turns to jewels. What once seemed like loss now becomes legacy. Think of it this way. Imagine carrying a backpack for 15 years, filled with stones you did not choose but were asked to bear. Every step was heavier, every climb steeper, but along the way, your muscles grew stronger. On September 14th to 15th, that pack is lifted. You may stagger at first, surprised by the lightness, but then you will realize, you are free. You are strong. And you are ready. But freedom alone is not the end of the story. The true beauty of graduation lies in what comes after. Virgo now holds a gift that few possess, the ability to guide others through their wilderness. The very pain that once silenced you becomes the testimony that inspires others. The delays, the denials, the heartbreaks, they transform into wisdom you can share, encouragement you can offer, compassion you can embody. You become not just a survivor of cycles, but a teacher of transformation. To my listeners, especially those in the middle and later seasons of life, I invite you to reflect. Do you remember what happened in 2010? That closed door, that broken dream, that sudden turn? Trace the patterns since then. Notice how certain themes returned again and again. You were not imagining it. You were living within a cycle of refinement. And if you are Virgo, then know this. The cycle is ending. The debt is paid. The graduation day has arrived. I ask you then, to join in this sacred conversation. Share your story in the comments. What began for you in 2010, and how has it repeated through the years? Let us weave together a tapestry of Virgo experience, a community of voices that reminds each soul that they are not alone. For storytelling is not just memory, it is medicine. And let us also look ahead with courage. Because graduation is not just about looking back with pride, but stepping forward with vision. The doors that once shut in your face may open again. The opportunities that seemed lost may return in new and unexpected forms. You will no longer meet them with fear of rejection, but with the confidence of one who knows they have earned their place. In my personal reflection, I see this as one of life's most sacred paradoxes. The years of struggle that once seemed wasted become the very foundation of future joy. Just as Christ's resurrection followed the crucifixion, just as dawn follows the longest night, Virgo's liberation follows their season of delay. The pain was not the end of the story. It was the soil from which a new season of abundance now grows. So, Virgo, step boldly. Let the dates of September 14th to 15th mark your heart. See them not as random days, but as a cosmic ceremony, a spiritual commencement. You are no longer the student of invisible burdens. You are the graduate of grace, humility, and perseverance. Carry your wisdom proudly, but lightly. And remember, your story is not just yours, it is a beacon for others. Before you leave this space, I invite you. Share your 2010, share your cycles, share your liberation. And if this message resonates with your heart, subscribe and turn on notifications, so that together we can walk into this next season, hand in hand, ready for what is to come. Because the truth is clear, the wilderness was never the destination. The graduation is here. And Virgo, your soul is ready to step into the fullness of its light. Virgo, as we reach the final chapter of this long story, let us pause to recognize the truth that has been unfolding. The weight you carried has been lifted, the karmic balance sheet is closed, and the debt that shaped the last 15 years is finally paid in full. You are stepping out of the invisible prison and into the freedom of your true self. This is not just an ending, it is a declaration of victory. The burden that once defined you is gone. The chains have fallen. The backpack you wore for so long has been set down. You can breathe deeply again, lighter and freer than you have felt in years. But this liberation comes with one final key: forgiveness. Not as an abstract virtue, but as the doorway into your new life. Forgive the people who disappointed you. Forgive the universe for the lessons that felt harsh. Most of all, forgive yourself for the moments when you doubted, stumbled, or felt unworthy. Forgiveness is the act of unclasping the last lock on your cage. It is the moment where pain is transformed into wisdom, where scars become symbols of survival, and where healing becomes real. Picture yourself as a graduate of a spiritual university, walking across the stage after 15 years of relentless study in resilience, patience, and courage. This is your commencement. You leave with the strength that suffering carved into you, but without the heaviness that once defined every step. What begins now is not survival, it is creation. And your journey is not only for you. Your healing radiates outward, becoming a beacon for others who are still lost in their own cycles of limitation. The light you carry now has the power to guide, to comfort, and to inspire. You are free, but you are also a part of something greater. The collective rising of souls who have endured, forgiven, and emerged stronger. So Virgo, let this be your mantra: my light attracts and protects me. Write it in the comments, claim it as your truth, and share your story of what began for you in 2010 and how it shaped you. By doing so, you remind others they are not alone. If this message resonates, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this ending is only the beginning. A new chapter is waiting, and you are finally ready to live it fully.